Hi, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, and evening. Thank you so much for joining us today. Oh, great. We're in like a full house already. My name is Ulsa Rahan, and I'm a policy officer at the Long Duration Energy Storage Council. Today, we're going to be introducing a conversation that's very much necessary for these times on the critical needs for long duration energy storage as part of the energy transition. Just some quick housekeeping. It's a full house today, and the session will be recorded. So that means on the screen, your names and your details will be shown for recording purposes. If that's not the case, I would appreciate if you can change that ahead of time. The session will run very swiftly with a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, which will be for about 20 minutes long. There's a Q&A feature on the top left of your bar. If you have any questions during any of the speakers conversing, please leave that in the Q&A box up in front and preferably not in the chat. To make sure conversation is a bit more livelier as well, please try to keep yourself. I think the speaking button is actually disabled, so that's great. Right, so I'm going to get right into the session today. I'm going to be briefly calling up Junior Solders and Frank Walters to briefly introduce the session today, and yeah, then we'll just see how well it goes. Thank you so much for joining, everyone, and it's not too late to send these to your colleagues. And yeah, I look forward to a fruitful discussion. Julia, over to you.
Thank you, Ahasa, and thank you all so much for joining us today. It's a great pleasure to be sharing the webinar with DII, MidGem, and the EU. Thank you all so much for joining us as we collaborate to really show by the end of the year how much work has been done and really just keep the momentum up of long duration energy storage as a crucial enabler to the energy transition. And we look forward to the panel discussion and your questions. And so just wanted to give a
Thank you so much, Julia.
Thanks.
I just wanted Frank to give a brief introduction as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, my mic has been disabled. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
we can.
thank you. Yes, well, of course, it's also my pleasure to be here. I'm sitting here representing both the MedGem network, which is let's say a platform that links the European Union to the countries of the Southern Mediterranean. And we like to focus on green electricity and molecules. And in my second capacity, I am the chairman of the MENA Hydrogen Alliance, which is part of DII Desert Energy. That's an industry group, primarily industry partners that try to better understand how we can achieve basically our mission, which is no emissions. So we're trying to figure out pathways to achieve that goal. And I think that gives me, let's say, both a government perspective as well as a private sector perspective. And these kind of fundamental changes to how we deal with energy in our daily lives cannot be done by governments alone, and it cannot certainly be done by the private sector. It really is a joined up approach, and better understanding, I think, is important, and that's what we're trying to achieve partly today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Frank. We're really glad to be doing this webinar with you in collaboration. So just briefly, we're going to all introduce the panels along the session. But joining us today, as you heard from Frank and Julia, is also Mr. Noni from the Magaldi Green Energy, and Upma from Sumitomo, and Mr. Pascal. They'll all be part of the panel later on. But just briefly, I wanted Julia to run through her keynote. So Julia, if you're ready for that, we would just transition to your keynote. Please let me know when to move the slide over.
Thanks, Ahasa. So the LDES Council has been working all year with partners around the world and really wanted to pinpoint, as we move into 2025, focus areas and 4 key findings. So we'll jump into a little bit more of the overview of the LDES Council. Next slide, Ahasa, please. And also kind of highlighting some of the key attributes of our most recent annual report publishing. So we're thrilled about the energy storage pledge at COP29 and its success and the commitment by many partners and countries to keep the momentum going. And I'll dive into that a little bit more in a second. Next slide, thanks. So LDES Council, who are we? We're really working hard on demonstrating the value out of long-duration energy storage. We need 8 terawatts by 2040 to really make sure we're hitting the net zero transition. And as we're seeing around the world, data from IA, IRENA, and many others about just a transition already happening with over 2 terawatts of wind deployed and 2 terawatts of solar deployed. And we're really seeing the drive of renewable expansion globally escalating. And as this occurs, we really also need to see the integration of long-duration energy storage, being able to fill in those gaps and provide security, reliability, resiliency 24/7. Next. And as we're really demonstrating around the world where LDES has already been deployed, but you're also seeing the need for scale and growth. As I pointed out, it's critical to have LDES for your net zero energy systems for power and heat. It always provides flexibility. And it also provides a huge savings of $540 billion US a year because you're deferring, transmission upgrades, you're deferring land mitigation. It has a whole other element of really being a part of the system. We need transmission grids, but as they take a while to build, you can have long-duration energy storage, provide congestion management services, and many other attributes to, again, really contribute to the reliability and security of the energy systems. And overall, we have a long-duration storage that provides ancillary services. So inertia, load following, frequency response, inertia. And this is all critical as we move towards replacing a lot of the traditional infrastructure. Next slide. And so we're really thrilled as the LDES Council to really, again, be a foundational voice and the thought leader to really demonstrate the critical role of long-duration energy storage and how important it is for decarbonizing power and heat industries. Even hard to abate sectors, long-duration energy storage plays a critical role. And we define long-duration energy storage as 8-hour plus, including chemical, thermal, mechanical, and electrochemical. So the 4 families that can be dispatched, days, weeks, and seasons. Next slide, thanks. And so again, the ecosystem that represents the long-duration energy storage really has the diverse mix of all types of industries, customers, utilities, equipment manufacturers, developers, again, really showing that you can discharge this energy, power, and heat for hours at a time, for days, for weeks. And again, participating in industrial sectors and the hard to abate sectors, providing a value add that is critical in this transition. And what we've been working on too is, again, promoting the different values of the different families. There's been a lot of discussion over the advancement in mechanical, from pumped hydro to compressed air to liquid air, from chemicals to power to X and power to power, with a variety of elements from the periodic table for batteries. And then we've also shown that there's many different attributes of thermal energy storage, building from rocks, salts, bricks, many other components that can, again, store heat for days, for seasons. And also, the power to X, again, hydrogen, ammonia, carbons. It's really important to, again, note that there's this immense diversity of technologies that are available and growing in scale to address the needs of the global marketplace. Next slide. And so moving into, just again, demonstrating, there are a lot of projects that will be deployed in the next few years. And many of these are already, in construction, but just showing again that you have all types of 4 families in the works around the world, and we look to scale and help, increase market access and opportunity for long-duration energy storage partners. Next slide. And there's more maps in our annual report to look at some additional projects and where they are. But this is so important because we really want to demonstrate that there are LDES projects available that we need to scale, and that we really need to help support markets around the world. And in doing so, targets are really beneficial. We noted, we worked with partners last year on helping promote the Tripling Renewables Pledge and doubling down on energy efficiency as part of the Global Renewables Alliance. And the Long-Duration Energy Storage Council worked with our partners, and we're really thrilled that the G7 leaders continue to outline the 1.5 terawatts of long-duration energy storage, or all types of durations of energy storage, by 2030. And how critical this is to really encouraging countries to include storage in their nationally determined contributions as part of the Paris Accords. So this pledge was introduced and it was accepted by over 50 countries. And we're looking forward to having more countries come online. And we look forward to partnering with the governments and economic partners to really help deploy storage as a critical component to enable the transition and be part of the savings and the benefits that can come with this transition. So again, this is fantastic momentum moving into 2025 that this has been so supported globally from a variety of regions, especially looking forward to more support from the Middle East. Next slide. And so with this pledge and the support for long-duration energy storage, we are looking at, again, these 4 key enablers. So in the next slide, if you highlight the fact that we are looking at these key findings. I'm not sure if it's frozen for me.
I'll just go back and come back again. Can you see it now?
No. Oh, no. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Thanks, Asa. Next slide, too. Could be a delay on my side. I think it's still stuck on. There's the cover of the annual report.
Can you see the full finding now?
No. Frank, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see it?
I just moved it forward.
I only see the cover.
Yeah, so do I. But one thing I can go through them while we're waiting for this is that we really need to have long duration energy storage scale 50 times faster. And this is critical because we really need to, again, meet that scale. There's so much opportunity and so much growth. If we're moving towards the 11 terawatts of renewable energy that's needed by 2030, we definitely need that 1.5 terawatts of energy storage. And in addition, really looking at another terawatt of long duration energy storage to fill in the gaps for those sectors. And we're also looking at a vibrant community. This vibrant community includes all of us, really incorporating long-duration energy storage into the mix. Regulators, policymakers, utilities, grid operators can all take in a role of how can long-duration energy storage become not just part of the modeling and planning, but also part of the built economy. Another area is also really looking at, and thanks, Ohasa, for working on the slides, looking at where we want to go with all of our communities. We're essential for decarbonization, as it has been highlighting throughout the presentation, and also just this call to action. All of us really do have a role to play, and we can really kind of build into our area. So the applications kind of highlighted earlier, power to heat, power to X, and power to power. There are a variety of different attributes and applications where LDES can play: transportation, industry, agriculture, cement, iron, steel, chemicals, and power and heat, again, and power to X. So there's this whole perspective that we're really trying to advance of how critical LDES is to enabling energy use and power and heat across all sectors, and that there is a role and there are opportunities of LDES technologies to provide the needed attributes. And next slide. Thanks, Asa. And so, looking at, we've mentioned about how enabling each sector, we've talked about the vibrant community. And also, I don't know, it's there we go. And I mentioned 50 times faster. Again, just showing not only do you get the savings, but you also have, the emissions reductions, you have scope 1, 2, and 3 being addressed. And so one example is as your charging infrastructure is being created, how are you charging your infrastructure? And long duration energy storage helps charge your EVs, many other attributes that you have. So again, how critical LDES is to decarbonizing heating and electricity supply around the world. And next slide. And I think just as the slides kind of keep going, I think I'll hand it over to Frank as we kind of go through these. Just to again highlight that we've got these 4 enablers, how well this is critical to decarbonization, how we've got the energy storage target that has really kind of helped the momentum. And then, we really got to work towards scaling and deployment. And the vibrant community, again, is all of us. So if you just click again, Ohasa, just to show in our report, we've got checklists for every one of us to kind of take a look at and see how can we bring LDES into our narrative, into our task to implement. And this is going to be so critical going forward to really, again, help us, build on the momentum and take action towards incorporating LDES into the clean energy transition. So I will hand it back over to Ohasa and hand it to Frank. But again, thank you all for joining us and look forward to working with you to help deploy each of these items on the checklist together. So thanks so much. Ohasa, I'll hand it to you and Frank.
Thank you so much, Julia. I'm going to hand over the slide sharing to my colleague Holly. to make sure that the bandwidth is good enough on my end. Great. Frank Walters, if you don't mind coming through to have your notes. I think Holly's slide should be coming up soon. But in the meantime, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself. Thank you so much, Frank.
Yes, thank you. I tried sharing my screen. Can you see my screen? Or is that not how you would like to run it?
You know what, if your screen, that's perfect as well. Yeah.
Pardon?
Just wait for your screen
Frank,
to come up.
Holly's got it.
We
If you
could
just
wait.
tell Holly next slide.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so basically, thanks for this great introduction. Julia, also full disclosure, I used to be on the board of the Long Duration Energy Storage Council, so it really feels like a large, big family. But even though I've been professionally involved in renewables for a long time, I've been a board member of Gore Street Capital, one of the largest investors in battery systems since 2015. And I built, one of the earlier molten salt thermal storage projects in Spain 15 years ago. I still always had this nagging feeling that I didn't have the proper picture of, what kind of role storage has in our global energy system. And about a year ago, we started a project at DII where we tried to, basically nail it down. And we started with looking around, and, to my somewhat shock and surprise, there is actually nobody that had that overall view on how much storage do we have, why do we have storage in a global context. It's not the IEA, not IRENA. You have, of course, there's a ton of people that know everything about oil and about natural gas and about LNG and about batteries, etc. But nobody had the overall picture, and that's what we why we started this project. And it was surprising, and it taught us a lot. Next slide. And there is basically three reasons why you store energy, and the first one is an obvious one. I think everybody understands that if you have supply on the one hand, demand on the other hand, there's not always a balance between those. So you have to have a buffer in between, and that's the technical reason for storage. Next. But the next two ones are more emotional, if you will. There's anxiety in terms of, do we always have the energy that we need? So there's energy security concerns. And, this has led in 1973 to the establishment of the IEA. And all the OECD members that are part of the IEA, they have 90 days of oil storage. And these are huge amounts. And the last one, you can actually make money by storing energy. You buy it when it's cheap, and then you sell it when it's more expensive. If you're an energy trader in the audience, don't get offended. I just try to entertain a little bit. But, there is a technical reason for storage, and then there is two more emotional, reasons for storage, and they add up, and the difference is actually significant. Next. So then we looked at the overall energy demand. Next, and then if you look at the global energy demand, it's about 168,000 terawatt hours every year. And the largest chunk of that is oil. 32% of all primary energy demand is still covered by oil. Coal then covers 27%, natural gas 24%, and then you have electricity, which is in the overall scheme of things 17%. And then we looked at how much storage do we have, and this was a bit of an eye opener. We store more than a quarter of all oil demand is in floating tanks, onshore tanks, in gas stations, etc. It's almost 10 billion barrels of oil that we store. Coal equally sizable. Like in the United States, the coal-fired power plants, they store half a year of burn next to the power plant, and then there is coal heaps in ports, etc. There is stuff on the road, etc. Natural gas a little bit more difficult to store, but still 13% in depleted gas fields, LNG tanks, etc. And now we come to electricity, and this is where I think a lot of people, need to understand the relationship and the orders of magnitude, because once you've made an electron, it becomes a lot more difficult and also more expensive to store that electron. And this 0.03% of annual demand of electricity, it's almost entirely pumped hydro. Batteries cannot even be seen on any meaningful scale in the bigger scheme of things. So this is, I think, important to remember, and I'll get into the electricity side of things a little bit later. But if you look at molecules, 20.8% of all molecules are stored, and for the three reasons that I've just mentioned: energy security, but also it provides a functional system that's also cost effective, because again, storage has a function in a value chain that connects lower cost sources of energy to higher value places where the demand is. Next. And then I went and did AI. I mean, this is 30 years ago, somebody told me if you do a presentation, you have to use pictures and metaphors because that sticks with people. So I said, let's start with a golf ball. The golf ball is the storage of electricity, and then make a big, this was actually for Brussels, make a big ball, a glass ball, and see whether the atomium fits in there. So this is what you get. The 137 meter tall sphere would be the annual electricity demand. We'll get to the numbers later, and we only store a golf ball. So that is really all of it. Next, and then let's look at the big numbers again. So this is your 168,000 terawatt hours of annual demand of primary energy. Electricity is 30,000 terawatt hours. And we store in pumped hydro 9.5 terawatt hours. Again, that is only 0.03% of electricity. And the question is, how does an electricity system work if you store 20.8% of all the molecules and only a tiny fraction of the electricity? And the answer is, if you keep clicking without going to the next slide, the answer is actually in the molecules. Because even though electricity is now more and more renewable. Every year 85-90% of all new additions, it's solar and wind because it's the cheapest thing to do. So renewable electricity is growing in size and significance. Still, 60% of all electricity is generated using molecules. And an important factor in that is the fact that we have storage of molecules, not so much in pumped hydro or batteries yet. I mean, of course, it will grow, but as I will show you later, it will still be, compared to the molecular storage, it will still be much, much, much smaller. Next. And then we looked at, okay, this is now, what about the future? So we looked at several scenarios. We looked at the IRENA, World Energy Transition Outlook. We looked at BP. We looked at several others. And then, we basically chose, this is IRENA's World Energy Transition Outlook. I think you put a white font on the white background, but it is basically, a scenario that's Paris compliant. And 50% of all final energy use is electricity by 2050. So this is without emissions. So the fossil fuels have carbon capture, etc. And there is broad consensus that in terms of final energy demand, half of it will be electricity, because it's now cheap to generate and make green electricity. It's cheaper than burning molecules. On the other hand, we then looked at how this system works. And when we spoke to the modelers, we spoke to all of them, asked them, how much storage do you have in your system? The first answer was always, we don't know. And then after a couple of days, we had another interaction, and they said it's, whatever, 8%, 7%, because the only storage that they looked at is the technical storage. So they didn't incorporate, the strategic reserves as well as the traded volumes, which are important parts of the energy system, because you do that because it's cost efficient. And then if you add that to an electricity system, then you have to add molecules. There is actually no other way. I mean, if we looked at the forward projections of, all the, let's say, the electricity storage technologies, batteries, pumped hydro, etc., it will go from 9.5 terawatt hours to 26.5. I think even if you add all the batteries in vehicles, it's still a low number. It's less than 100 terawatt hours. Right now, we have 28,500 terawatt hours of molecular storage. That will go down slightly, but it'll still be, orders 1,000 times, more storage in molecules than there is in electrons, if you will. So that is the reality. The models don't work. They just don't, picture an electricity system that works. It will be different, but it will be, also very similar. Next. So, this is what I already said. We will grow from 9.5 terawatt hours to 26.5 terawatt hours. The batteries will actually outgrow pumped hydro. And of course, as we are here with the Long Duration Energy Storage Council, there is other tech, etc., that will grow, but it'll still be small compared to molecules. Now, the cost of battery storage is much higher than storing molecules, and this is part of the reason why it is like this. So the 0.05%, which we'll have in the future, accounts for 30% of storage capex by 2050. Next. In terms of how much energy, how much does it cost to store molecules? Because we looked into all of that. We looked into all the aspects, and especially the cost. It's a lot more expensive to store clean molecules. So hydrogen is a very tiny molecule. It's more expensive to store than natural gas, and of course, a lot more expensive to store hydrogen than storing coal, which you can basically put on a heap, and it's a bit of land cost. The capital cost of current storage is $2.7 trillion. In the future, it will be 18. So we will increase the capex cost of storage in the future by 6x. Next. And then the final result looks like this. And in a way it's different, but in a way it's also very similar. If you look at the overall storage percentage, that doesn't change much. What will change is that the molecules that we are going to use in the future will have to be clean. So right now it's oil from the Middle East and going to Europe and Japan and China, and it's gas from other places going to other places. In the future, we'll have similar flows of clean molecules, but you'll be, exporting, let's say, ammonia from Mauritania to Europe instead of, oil from the Middle East to Europe. But roughly the numbers will remain the same. The trade flows will be there, but they'll be different. But in principle, it's going to yield a somewhat similar system, with geographic differences. Thank you. And this is if you click on this, you'll be able to download the report.
Thank you so much, Frank. I would just like to reiterate that, if you do scan the code that was on the screen again, Holly, if you can go back one, you'll be able to download the report that Frank made reference to. Thank you so much, everyone. And please remember that you can leave your questions in the Q&A box on the top of your screens. Just the questions will be answered at the very end of the webinar, so you can leave them there and we'll get to them towards the end of the webinar. Moving ahead, we have another keynote actually from Massimiliano, who is the Global Business Director of the Magaldi Green Energy. And he's going to be speaking with us, taking us through a case study presentation on the practical use case to decarbonize a food industrial process. I'm really looking forward to this, and I hope you enjoy it as well. Over to you, Max.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Holly's going to share your screen, so just let her know. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, and thank you for having us, Magaldi, at this very interesting webinar. So let's go. As Julia and Frank described, this is a very incredible moment for long duration energy storage. So it's small, but it's going to grow exponentially. And of course, there are a number of startups that are competing to occupy this space of long duration energy storage. Magaldi is a startup that has almost 100 years of history. So we are hopefully moving soon from a startup to a scale-up. Innovation is at the core of our philosophy. It's an Italian company that is located in southern part, close to Naples. Headquarters is in Salerno. We are a worldwide leader in conveyors. So the business, the 90 years old business, is a traditional business in which the company learned how to handle hot temperature materials to be transported in the harshest industrial environment. So out of this experience, let's say more than 10 years ago, the company decided to move into renewables, into thermal energy. So the core capability is handling hot materials up to 1000 degrees. And we started studying a concentrated solar power plant based on an innovative technology. Typically, these plants are run with molten salt, but we start using sand, the normal silica sand, and store the heat, the thermal heat produced by the sun into the sand. So this initial experience that, of course, is related to the sun irradiation moved into a standalone power-to-heat storage that is currently our main product. And if we go to the next slide, it's based on this more than 10 patents we have around this concept of sand that is working in a fluidized sand bed. So the idea is very simple. We inflow air into this tank that is full of sand, and the thermal diffusivity of the heat is increasing 1,000 times compared to, let's say, steady bed, steady situation in which you can have concrete, rock, gravel as the media. So this is, of course, a big innovation because it's increasing the efficiency and the productivity of the storage. And if we combine this with, let's say, negligible losses that are below 2% on a daily basis, it means that we can keep this high temperature for days, even weeks, and be able to release steam out of this storage. And as you see in this picture, this static image, the sand is becoming almost like a fluid. It's boiling when the air is injected, and this creates this thermal diffusivity effect. Next slide, please. So the concept is organized in one integrated model, and we charge with electricity. Of course, we can take electricity from the grid, but the system is designed to take electricity from renewable sources, so solar, wind, any renewable sources, and the grid can be combined. And then we inflow the air. When we need to keep this energy, we stop inflowing the air, and the fluidization system is discontinued, and we can peacefully keep this temperature up to 500, 600 degrees. Then when we discharge, so when we need steam or hot air, we inflow again air, and the steam is flowing out of the equipment. So by using these patents that we have developed, we can charge and discharge simultaneously or not. So we can charge when there is the electricity available from the renewable sources, and we can discharge, or we can keep the storage. And this allows us to cover the 24/7 cycle. Next one. So the beauty of the technology is that it's modular as well. So we can move from a small, let's say, footprint of 40 square meters up to, let's say, 200 square meters, and store up to 60 megawatt hour thermal energy, which is quite interesting for a daily cycle. It's consistently ESG compliance. We can go up to 1000 degrees. Currently, we cover the temperature up to 620, but of course the sand can reach much higher temperatures, and this is different than molten salts that can operate within a strict range of temperatures. We can charge it in 6, 7, 8 hours and discharge it, let's say, in the evenings. It's very fast, it's already integrated, and there is a very important quality assurance that Magaldi, being not a simple startup, is covering. Next, please. So what are the targets? The targets are a number of industrial spaces, as you see in this slide. So we are able to provide steam at 150 degrees easily. That's our, of course, initial target for this, let's say, for starting the market. Then there are a consistent number of industrial areas still engageable within 150 and 350 degrees. And of course, when we increase the temperature, the industrial spaces reduces, but still we can work in oil and gas and chemicals, with food and tobacco, typical non-metallic minerals, so mining. There are a number of opportunities that can be also covered when we increase the temperature range. Next. So in terms of markets, we see in this chart that there are, of course, we can segment the market by temperature. So let's say below 150, again, up to 500 and above 500. So our sweet spot is, let's say, the green in the middle of each area. This is in terms of terawatt hour. And the US and Europe seems to be the most interesting market to target. But of course, there are a number of important markets also worldwide, meaning that the decarbonization of industrial heat is potentially a huge business. It's something that has been estimated for working on our business plan around 300 billion. And of course, there is an important consideration about starting with incentives to start any kind of innovative business and then go to market parity as soon as possible. Next one. So the power to heat is our business, as we described. So we can take the electricity when it's cheap, when it's curtailed, transform it into steam, and release it when it's needed from the industrial cycle. Of course, we can do cost optimization, arbitrage, energy management system will be crucial, artificial intelligence to optimize this cycle. In the future, there will be an opportunity to reconvert further this heat into power. And these can be cases of repurposing of coal, oil power plants, of course, contribute to grid services, help decongesting grids, and also the general management of renewables. So we see the industrial power to heat as the market for the next 3-5 years, and power to power again in the next, say, 7 years onwards. Next one. So as I said, we are in Buccino, Salerno. So you see the red dot in the chart. We have already a pilot plant, and we are delivering a much larger, we call it MGTS, Magaldi Energy Storage, to a food processing company that is working with Ferrero. So we are helping decarbonizing in Nutella, basically. And if we go to the next slide, which is the final one. So even with a small plant, so we are talking about 2 megawatt of installed power capacity, we target to decarbonize, let's say, 70% of gas consumption of this company. That is around 600 tons of CO2 per year. So, of course, there are a number of big announcements in the market to decarbonize big industrial cycles, but even starting small can be significant in terms of decarbonization. And for sure, it's a very good example on how to convert smart electricity into steam and create this new business that, as I said, is quite sizable and is coming very fast. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Max. And I'll also just share, there was a video that was shared, and I think that will go in our chat as well. Thank you. We're really doing great for time, and thank you so much to everyone who's joined within the last 30 minutes. We will now be moving forward to the panel discussion. But joining Julia, Frank, and Max, currently Upma, who is the Senior VP of the Energy Storage Business Unit at Supermoto, and also Pascal, who's the President and CEO of Geostock. I'll be handing it over to Frank, who is going to be moderating the panel discussion. And Holly, I think you can stop sharing the slides now so we can see the discussion in full. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy.
Yes, thank you, Gosa. Let me start with Julia. I mean, you mentioned COP29. You also showed the picture of the signature, and you know, your organization, the LDES Council and the Global Renewables Alliance, was instrumental in Azerbaijan. So what does the global energy storage target actually mean for the LDES global market?
Thanks, Frank. And it's great to be here again with all of you. So this is critical because what we've noticed for the last couple of years is how important targets are to give strong market signals and that regulatory certainty. And it's worked really well for renewables, for EV infrastructure, and many more. And so we really wanted to ensure that integrated into policies and plans and permits was the discussion of storage, and also wanted to raise more awareness of how important long duration energy storage is. So this 1.5 terawatts by 2030 is large. I mean, as you pointed out, we don't have as much storage deployed as we need to, and we need to grow it fast. But we also are really trying to change the narrative that the durations really matter, and that this is really important to have short duration, but we need to look at the 8, the 24, the 100, and the seasonal storage to really kind of fill in the gaps. And so this is going to be key, as I mentioned earlier, to the NDCs, the nationally determined contributions that over 130 countries are going to be submitting next year with their plans of how they're going to be looking at the clean energy transition. And storage is such a critical enabler to this. We want to make sure that the metrics are all in sync and understood, and to really put out to partners around the world that we are a partner to work with and to really help, you know, on the numbers, on the metrics, and on the data to really help fill in the gaps with all the countries and the customers and the different partners. So we're looking forward to working in partnership with everyone to really start implementing what this looks like to build the 1.5 terawatts of storage and the additional 1 terawatt of long duration storage that we'd like to see.
Thanks, Julia. Can you help us? Like, how many countries have storage targets right now?
A handful. So I'd say, you know, it's around 20, and it's a different gauges. And then I think if you really want to look at additional metrics, and what's thrilling is that we had over 55 countries sign on to this pledge, and then we're hoping even by the next few weeks we'll see that number grow dramatically too.
Okay, so it is actually, you know, probably really helpful that you had this pledge, because it crowds in, you know, other countries, etc. Cool. Yeah, Upma, I mean, from your perspective, you know, you're representing a company, but what is the role of governments other than, you know, setting the targets? What should be, you know, their main role, and also what shouldn't they do? Where should they keep their hands off?
Yeah, thanks, Frank, and it's nice to be here. I mean, governments are the key, as we all know, and I mean, they set the targets, they identify when they want to be net zero. But what we have seen is that generally the path to achieve those decarbonization goals is really not set out. So what we see is that the governments, and when I say government, it means policymakers, regulators, market operators, who don't really do an in-depth analytical modeling of the systems. What you also presented is that how do you really achieve those net zero targets, and how should the grid really look like? So it's not really about just looking at adding renewables, which is very important, yes. It's not really about having, okay, we are doing capacity expansion. It's all about it's a second level of modeling that we're talking about, how the grids become resilient and how they become stable, how do you get the energy security, which we think is missing. And we are working, even in Sumitomo Foster Wheeler, we are actually working very closely with the stakeholders in Western Australia to do that. That's one of the points to really have an in-depth and to really understand where the LDES is needed. The second point is that there is no market access for LDES today. There is no long-term revenue stability available in the market. The governments understand, even if they do set targets, they really don't change their market mechanisms, which would provide confidence to the investors to invest in LDES. So we see that most of the projects that are happening around the world are basically provided by funding, like you have Department of Energy in US, you have some things happening in Australia, some things happening in UK. But in order for LDES to be deployed, it's very important that the stakeholders are creating the secured and stable long-term revenue mechanism. That is missing. Then we have a chicken and egg situation where the financing is not available for the LDES technologies because they need to have a certain TRL. So pre-commercial support for having these technologies come up, the government can play a very big role in that. What they should not do, I would say that believing that they know it all. And normally when we talk about energy storage, which you presented it very well to give a holistic view, it's about LDES. Why long duration storage is needed. A constant dialogue with technology providers is needed because as we have seen that there are different kinds of technology providers. And there is a clear lack of understanding what different technologies can give into the system. So we have a long road here. In the annual report, you would have seen that there are we have electrochemical, thermal, mechanical storage, and each one of them provide different values. So it's a very comprehensive work that they need to do and understand from my perspective.
So what they shouldn't do is not understand. They should understand by engaging. Very good.
They shouldn't believe that they know it. Okay, we know energy storage. That's what you see. We know about it. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. That's very helpful. Now, Pascal, in terms of let's say governments and regulatory regimes, very often if you look at the electricity system, then storage, in particular pumped hydro, it can actually be done by the grid operators. They can just pass the extra cost for storage onto their customers. The regulator allows for that, and then there is a mechanism to do that. Now in gas storage is almost exclusively private, right? So there is not a gas transmission system operator or a DSO that has storage, because that's just not the way the market works. What's your view on this?
Well, first, thanks, Frank, for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Sorry, Pascal. Let me also ask you to briefly introduce yourself. I jumped over you.
Yeah, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of Geostock. So Geostock is in a few words, is a company that is specialized in the design, in the construction, and in the operation of energy underground storage. And I'm speaking about molecules only: hydrogen, hydrocarbon, ammonia, compressor, and CO2. It's not an energy. And we are speaking about massive storage capacity. You show the Atomium in Brussels, but the size of our storage or the size of Notre Dame or the Eiffel Tower. And we are an old company, 60 years old, working in 50 different countries with 500 people. So this is showing that it's a major technology. Now, your question highlights the difference between the electricity and the gas market, which arise from several differences. And the first one is the physical property. As you said, it's difficult and expensive to store electricity. We are storing, as you said, and thank you for your very interesting study, 0.03% of the electricity needs. And this makes balancing the supply and demand a more immediate and complex task that is usually given to the TSO. In the case of the gas, as you said, it's quite easy to store. We are storing 20% of the gas, and the balancing between the supply and demand can be done over a longer time scale. It's a proven technology. It's safe. It's cost effective. It's a huge market, and there are more people that are investing in this type of storage. And then the market structure, I think you said it. I mean, for electricity, storage is only a technical tool, okay, to balance or to maintain the stability and the reliability of the system. For gas, it's both, as you said, technical, anxiety, and trade. Okay, and it's more seen as a commercial and a trading tool, as well as a mechanism to ensure the security of supply. And that's why it's much more open to the private sector. What is sure is that in the future, with the integrated system, the gas and the molecules and the electricity, we will need much more integration between the two.
Okay, very interesting. Max, over to you. The kind of innovation that your company is developing, your prototyping, etc. It all requires money, and I assume because it's early days that your revenue is still somewhat away in terms of when are you returning a profit? What kind of capital are we looking? Both in terms of the kind of capital that you need in your company and in other companies, but also in terms of implementation, building these systems.
Yes, Frank. Well, of course, Magaldi, I mentioned is a company, a well-established company. So the initial 10 years of research and development were financed by, let's say, the parent company. But now we are moving into the scale up. So revenues are starting. But of course, those are negligible compared to the amount of capital needed to scale. So it's if you take the benchmarks, all the companies in the space, they have let's say raised between 20 and 60 million, even 100 up to 100 million to start with. So it's, of course, it's significant, but it's not a big amount of money because the technologies are innovative, but still, down to earth. So we think that with the same amount of money to start, let's say, the scaling up, it's sufficient. On the other hand, when we move into the project, so let's say the capital needed for SPVs, that game can be different because, of course, you need to decarbonize a number of megawatt hour. And so we have the average project is around $10 million, let's say, and then it's easy to go to 100 million per project. And this means per company. So, of course, also as Hupma was mentioning, it's difficult to get the bankability of this important amount of resources without stable long-term revenues. All the companies are risking in heat as a service business model, which is very risky. Also the work.
Why is that risky, Max? Why is that risky? Explain to the audience.
It's risky because in the end you want to take, at least in our space, so power to it, you want to take power and then to sell it in a, let's say, more affordable way than gas. But we know that gas is quite cheap. Someone is paying, of course, CO2 for CO2 credits, someone no. So it's unless you put incentives there at CapEx and OpEx level, it's risky. So 1 year maybe you can get. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can't you, think of a tolling agreement where basically the risk that you supply as a supplier, is limited to the technology risk, but then, the market risk in terms of, pricing of electricity and gas, that's not you. I mean, you can't influence that. That would be your client. Is that an option?
is an option, but of course, I mean, industrial off-takers want to be very, let's say, prudent and conservative at the beginning, so they are not willing to take the risk. They want to reverse it to, let's say, NGS or technology providers, and the chicken and eggs, someone has to take the risk. So that's the loop now. Yes.
Yeah, fair enough. Julia, can you take a question, or you're
Go ahead. I can do it right now. Yes.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of your companies of the council, you know, a lot of them are big, but there is also, of course, a whole range of, you know, startups that have really cool and interesting and promising tech. But like almost, you know, all tech companies with something new, there is this, you know, dreaded valley of death, where, you know, you have to go through this dry spell and money runs out, and you know, you're struggling to survive. So what are strategies for them to survive this valley of death?
That's a great question, and one that we also debate a lot with our different partners and members. I think one builds on UTMA's point of pre-commercial funding. You know, we've also been doing a lot of education outreach with tons of different financial institutions, so not just traditional banks and development banks, but VC venture firms, to really start changing the bankability criteria. Most of the checklists today do not capture all the additional benefits that LDES can provide. So we're matching more of the upfront contributions and kind of allocations that can be provided and kind of give that long-term patient capital. We've also been working, in addition to helping change the criteria, bringing additional partners, having conversations with insurance agencies and warranties, again, looking at the criteria so that it really can incorporate all the additional benefits of LDES. We've been working on how are these partnerships kind of given attribution. And so this is something that we've been also helping change in the modeling. A lot of the modeling today doesn't really even provide, again, the right criteria for long-duration storage. So there's a lot of ongoing discussion about changing the modeling tools, moving away from levelized cost of storage to different types of attribution. So all of this is going to be a significant game changer in the financing, because it will help open up the narrative to the additional benefits that LDES can provide. I think the other thing too is that some of these innovative technologies have been around for decades and building off some of the many lessons learned from other technologies, but now the need is there. And so now the conversation has changed over why these new technologies need to come to the marketplace, because they're filling in gaps that didn't exist before. And that's why we're seeing data centers, hyperscalers really start pushing the narrative on the need for long-duration storage, developing new types of partnerships to deploy different types of LDES, whether it's geography or whether it's urban or rural. The fact that there are different attributes that can be addressed and deployed are a game changer.
Thank you. Pascal, I have a question. It's also somebody in the, you know, in the chat asked it. What are good LDES policies? I mean, and Pascal, you can answer. Maybe Upma, you can also reflect on this question. What are good policies?
Well, I think there is a need to give some visibility and stability for the market. When you look at this project, I'm speaking about molecules underground storage, but these projects are a few $100 million per project. So who is going to finance this type of project if you don't have a clear regulation, if you don't have a clear remuneration model, if you don't have a quick permitting process? I mean, because the permitting process currently are probably around 2 years or maybe more, and out of a 6-year project, that's huge, and that's costing a lot of money. So we need to have a quick permitting process and financial support. So that's what we need. And then in addition to that, I think that the states need to give also some visibility through they need to define their strategy in terms of energy storage with quantified targets and an associated planning. And this will give visibility and stability to the investors, and will speed up the development of storage, energy storage.
Well, that's a handful of things that you said are necessary. Upma, is there any country that stands out at the moment that has a supportive, you know, policy environment, you know, for LDES?
Well, recently, I wouldn't say that it's recently in UK, they introduced cap and floor mechanism for long duration storage, but then they limited it to 6 hours. There's a lot of work going on there, but it's still not there because we are talking of LDES as 8 hour plus. So I would say that the work that needs to be done for the policymakers to really have elders into the grid. A lot of work is needed. For example, long-term capacity agreements are not there applicable for elders, or even the capacity market mechanism doesn't really work for elders. So these are the crucial requirements that are required on the policy side for the elders to be deployable, and in addition to the financing support, which I already said before.
There is, thank you, Upma. There's a question here on hydrogen storage. Does anybody feel inclined? Pascal, that's probably, you're closest to this. So the question is, the role of hydrogen storage in relation to the massive low carbon electrification needs in terms of cost, benefits, and incentives and hurdles. So basically, like how do we, what do we need to do, to incentivize or, basically enable hydrogen storage, also supporting the electricity system? Do you have any views on that?
Yeah. Well, we need to do exactly what I've said before, but as regard to hydrogen energy storage underground, okay, because in the future, if we need to store hydrogen, we need massive storage capacity. Just to give some order of magnitude, in a tube trailer, you will store 1 ton, okay. In a cryogenic sphere, you will be able to store 200 tons. Okay, if you go to underground storage in a salt cavern, okay, you will be able to store probably around 4,000 to 5,000 tons of hydrogen. So 1 ton tube trailer, 200 tons in a sphere, 5,000 tons in a salt cavern. Okay, and this technique is mature. I mean, the first hydrogen cavern has been created in 1971, and you have 6 caverns around the world. So it's a mature technology. It's probably the most cost affordable technology, and we need to develop this storage capacity in the future. It's existing, it's proven, and it's less expensive. Another order of magnitude, okay, if you have 500 million to invest in an underground in a storage of hydrogen, 500 million. In a sphere, you will be able to store 500 tons. And in a salt cavern, you will be able to store 15,000 tons. 500 million euro to invest, 500 tons in a sphere, 15,000 tons in a salt cavern. Okay, so going underground gives you massive storage capacity at a much lower price. So again, we need to develop this type of project. And for that, we need to give some visibility and stability to the investors.
Yeah, thanks. Max, do we have the required people power and skill sets? I mean, in your view, is that a bottleneck? I mean, do we have the people that we need?
Well, Frank, the war for talents is a cross topic, but I would say that we have the capabilities and the competence in the sector, because we have everywhere in the world beautiful engineers, we have innovators, we have people that wants to take risk for the decarbonization, and of course we have also the opportunity to create a dialogue through council like LDES, the DEI, and increase the awareness. So I'm sure it's not a moonshot, this one. So we have the capabilities, but of course we need to attract the talents, because sometimes we are in this, let's say, pond of okay, it's really happening, this decarbonization, or it's something that is something that you cannot beat, because fossil fuels are strong, are cheap, are everywhere, and why shall we push for it? So we need to create some traction, some momentum, and to accelerate a lot. So technologies are there. There are a number of course, capex required for further R&D, but I will say the technical capabilities are available, and we can start this process and, of course, improve the generation of these technologies every 5-10 years and increase the productivity and the efficiency of these solutions.
Thanks, Max. Julia, you would like to add something to this?
Yes, thanks, Frank. One thing that we've been also really, sharing with our colleagues in universities and labs around the world, how critical it is to continue to promote STEM, but also on what the new thing is for, upskilling. So workers that are in mining or traditional companies like oil and gas, a lot, as Max has pointed out, the infrastructure of a lot of LDES projects can be cut and pasted into existing infrastructure. So there's a lot of upskilling that can also happen in the transition. So this is a huge part with the mining industry and many others that we're really trying to show there's bridges here to, again, really help improve the dialogue and show that there's not a huge learning curve, but some wonderful opportunities.
Thank you. Ugma, I mean, you briefly touched upon, the revenue model for a typical LDES project. Can we, drill down a little bit in how that works? I mean, what's your view? How does a storage project work from a economic perspective?
Thanks, Frank. So there are different types of revenue models that can be there, but in order to be able to have a revenue mechanism, at the moment, what is existing in the market is capacity market, which is not yet suitable for LDES, long duration energy storage. And then we have cap and floor mechanism in some countries, which is again not suitable for long duration storage. So these two mechanisms which exist today need to be suitable for long duration storage. In addition to that, when we talk about decarbonization, we also need to consider that the grids need to be stable. So when we are removing the rotating mass from the grid, you need to supplement with providing the grid stability services. There is no revenue mechanism yet which can be given for inertia or reactive power or short circuit power. This is completely missing from the when analytical modeling is done by system operators. There are some cases in the UK where it is just given on one-off a case, but there is no standard for how these services can be incentivized. So that really needs to happen all over, because what happens in the industry, we see the renewable targets are set, but no holistic approach, what we call as AC modeling, that nodal analysis modeling, that you define and you understand where the congestion is happening in the system, you understand the constraints in the system, and you actually come up with a complete comprehensive model of what is really needed in the system. And then you can have a revenue mechanism which incentivizes these services, which does not exist at the moment.
But when you say that, capacity markets, for example, is not really suitable for LDES, why not?
For example, we are working in Western Australia, their capacity market basically is limited to 4 hours of battery storage. So if you provide a storage of, let's say, 12 hours, it doesn't really matter to them, because that's what they see. That the capacity fee that they give is suitable for that. So that also goes to the fact of what we said, that the need on understanding of long duration storage does not exist, even though it is spoken quite a lot. That does not exist in many of the countries today, I would say.
But I mean,
how do you incentivize? How do you really bring it in the system?
But if you look at, let's say battery storage projects, they have a variety of income streams, right? I mean, they do fast frequency response in its various forms, and then there may be some capacity payment, and they're to some extent stackable. So why can't you, if you do a 12-hour system in Western Australia, you take the capacity charge which is there, which may provide you whatever 30% of your revenue, and the rest you'll have to find something else. But isn't that the case also for LDES, like for batteries?
No, Yeah, because you always have the missing money. Now, what happens with batteries? We know that lithium ion, the capex is very low, right?
Mhm.
And they are able to provide, like for example, why do we have the term long duration storage itself? Because short duration storage or the fast frequency response has been provided by batteries for a long time now. So they will always be in the mix. And then it's not only about energy shifting, as I said, that when you're doing a 8-hour storage with a battery, you're doing energy shifting essentially. You're really not looking at other parameters that I said. What about the inertia? What about the short circuit power? What about the reactive power that goes missing from the grid? And it leads to problems. We have seen problems happening in India, for example, that at a time 6.5 gigawatt hour just went away from a Western state in India. So these things are happening. Then what happens is that the market operator then, okay, let's put a synchronous condenser now. Let's put a wire now. So these things then come up later because nobody has really looked at the holistic view of modeling the system. We are trying to do it. Let's see when we finish our modeling. It will take about 12 months to time to do that, and we definitely share it.
But in your view, would this be something that, if you were in charge of the country, would you say let the transmission system operator run all these things and own them, or procure it from market players, but at least that they can pass the cost on to, clients instead
No,
of,
sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Finish your question, then answer.
No. I mean that was a question. Instead
No,
of
it's
storage companies and projects trying to fend for themselves in a market that doesn't exist yet because it's all new,
yeah.
etc.
Yeah. No, it's a dialogue between the different stakeholders. It's not that it's only the market operator. For example, we know that in Western Australia, even though it's not there in the market, the market operator is buying inertia outside the market, right? And so these things are happening because they still do see the problem in the system. So it's not only the market operator, it's the policy, it is the people who are writing the policies or the regulators that all need to come together and figure out, okay, and obviously the governments need to understand that eventually it may seem that you're spending more, but when you're looking at a scenario of how you decarbonize, you will save money in the grid. So as you say, everything is revolving around the money. People want to make money, investors want to make money. So when everybody comes together and understands that the goal is to have decarbonized grid, the goal is to have a stable grid, then I think the way the approach and the way people approach it would really change. We are trying, I think, through the Elders Council also we are trying. As Mitama Foster Villa, we are trying in Australia. We are trying to look at in India as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Keep up the work. Talking about money, Pascal, is a price on carbon relevant in this whole discussion? I mean, 25% of all emissions have a price. 75% of emissions are free. Is this in this whole discussion about LDES? Is that a factor or not?
Well, that's for sure. If there is a price of carbon, this will accelerate, the development of storage. I mean, if there is a price of carbon, there will be more investment in renewable energy. And if we want to make this renewable energy affordable, we know that storing this energy will probably reduce the cost of distribution by, it's an estimate of between 15 and 25%. So, of course, this will have an impact. We need to have a price of carbon.
Okay. Then a question for you, Max. I mean, you're a tech company. You've invested in R&D. Can you maybe philosophize a little bit on beyond your own scope, like what kind of R&D is required, and what kind of technology do we need? I mean, of course, there's a broad scope of things that the council, as Julia said, is involved in, or the members are involved in. Are we doing enough in terms of R&D?
Well, it's a beautiful question, Frank. So I think, I'm not an engineer, but I learned a lot working with Magaldi, because of course you need first to have the passion for innovation. And even, I mean, imagine starting more than 10 years ago in, accumulating thermal energy in the sand. I mean, there was no market. Absolutely, there was it was an intuition from Mario Magaldi and the family, Magaldi family. So we have these kind of examples all around the world. Typically, also spin-off from universities, from the academy world, can contribute into this, let's say, initial triggering of the process. To me, it's clear that the big challenge in, for instance, thermal energy storage is to increase temperatures. So you want, of course, to get to 1,100, 1,200, 1,300, which technically is feasible with the, with cement, with sand, with all the storage materials that we have identified. A number, probably there are 40, 50 players in this space. But the components that you have inside any kind of equipment are very stressed when they move from 500 to 600, 700, 800. So there is an exponential stress.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. Can you explain to the audience why you have to go to these higher temperatures?
Because the higher the temperature you have in the storage, the more storage you have. Because, for instance, if you go from 600 to 200, we have 400 degrees of storage. If it's from 1,000 to 200, it's 800, meaning that you have more hours of storage. So you can
accumulate. So you just basically, you save on steel and sand. Yeah.
Sure. Exactly. You increase the intensity of the energy and of this, let's say, device. But of course, the device needs to operate. The equipment needs to operate on a daily basis, on a base load basis, on peak hours. So the quality of the components will be, as we have learned in other industrial spaces, will be critical to increase, let's say, productivity, reduce cost, and be competitive with fossil fuels in the long term. So this requires a lot of R&D, new materials, biotechnology, I would say also artificial intelligence to learn and to accelerate, things that are typically done by engineers. We need to leverage also this new powerful tool of AI.
Thank you. Julia, you already mentioned we need to speed up. I have the feeling that we're not going fast enough. Is that right?
Well, we mentioned in our report we need to scale 50 times faster, and this is a large number, but it is doable because, the world is working on this collectively. This is a need by every country to really address their economy, and whether they want to create a brand new market or have a brand new infrastructure, the industrial components also need to be, kind of really in this transition. So we really want to call out all the different players that are part of this action plan. So again, as mentioned earlier, it's regulators, policymakers, utility, grid operators, industrial customers, data centers, local communities, agriculture, chemicals, like every single sector has a role with long-duration storage, can really help address the need. And I think this is how we're going to get to that scaling 50 times faster. These markets are really important for the, going to 2030. And so that's just around the corner. 5 years away. But then we can't stop there. A lot of these technologies also need, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So we need to continue to really start today. So we're ready in 2030, 2035, 2040, and 2045. And that's going to be key, is that we keep this momentum going. We keep changing the policies. We keep deploying infrastructure, because we need to build past the next 5 years. We have to keep going. And that's going to be a big part of the meeting the 50 times faster goal, and really, again, achieving the $540 billion of benefits annually when we deploy 8 terawatts of LDES.
Thanks. And Max just gave me a great segue to my follow-up question on this when he mentioned AI. AI in terms of designing better systems, but it's at the same time it's also a massive driver for additional capacity of electricity. Is that a driver for LDES? Can you build on that?
Look, it's a beautiful opportunity because the world needs electricity. To grow. Electricity is strongly correlated with GDP, with also wealth of the countries. So I personally, and I mean, as Magaldi, we are very positive. Even if we are, let's say, a medium company, we are learning and studying how to apply AI in procurement, in our supply chain, and also, I mean, it will come in the R&D. So there will be surplus of electricity coming from renewables. I mean, curtailments is a big risk. It's 10-15% going further of this energy. I mean, either we use it for Bitcoin, which is fine. I'm not against Bitcoin, but if we use it for AI, probably it's better for humanity.
Julia, any reflection on the massive drive in AI capacity and the additional demand for electricity in the years to come? Is that
Yes.
a driver of LDES?
It's huge. I mean, because we've been hearing from different hyperscalers, different AI data centers, that there's anywhere from 5 to 8% annual growth. And so in emerging economies, it's over 11% annually. So this is huge. And data centers are really looking forward to bringing LDES into the mix. Recently in the United States, there was an example of Microsoft, Google, and Nucor coming together to do an RFP for LDES. And they had over 400 applicants for this. And we're going to be looking forward to the update on what the process is and the criteria, so they can help really share their lessons learned with the rest of the community and global community of how to take this process and make it better and adapt it locally. This is one of many we're seeing in Africa with a lot of the new data centers and warehousing, how to bring in hybrid permitting and partnerships, so that if they're already looking at building infrastructure, wind and solar, how to expedite storage, especially long duration storage, into the mix. As Uma pointed out, Western Australia and Eastern Australia are developing very different grids. And what does this look like? Different industrial customers are asking for different parts of the supply and demand curve. And so this whole planning attribute is also critical as we go forward. So the AI infrastructure, it's changing the dialogue. It's really bringing together industrial voices to really, again, help see how critical LDES is. And we're thrilled that there is this conversation about the increase in growth and demand, but we're not thrilled about how slow it's moving. So we want to really, again, show that we can move faster if we collaborate and really start changing the modeling criteria and the revenue mechanisms to really ensure that LDES has that long-term continuity.
Thank you. I see there is no further questions in the chat. I then would like to thank this excellent panel for their insights. It's been a great conversation. I think we will share it using AI actually. So we had an assistant that listened and hopefully didn't gobble it all up, but I think we'll pass it through a human interface first. Over to you, Julia. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Frank. It's also great. I mean, it's wonderful to have both past chair Frank and current chair Uma on a webinar together. What a special treat. So again, bridging all these different attributes and economies and partnerships. It's we're doing it live. So thank you so much. I want to thank Pascal for your amazing contributions, and Max, thank you so much too for your insights into technologies today, and again showing the diverse mix we have. I want to thank Ohasa and Holly for helping us, and I will hand it back to Ohasa for some closing remarks. But thank you all so much, and happy holidays.
Thanks.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for the insightful discussions and all the questions in the comment and chat box. Yeah, this has been super informative. And if anything, I feel there's a lot of storage conversations that we're going to have even more so into the new year. We're obviously going to be sharing in the chat box now just the LDES annual report that was launched at COP29 in Baku, and also the same materials that were shared by the speakers. I just want to thank everyone for your time this afternoon. We're a bit 5 minutes over, but if no one, if there's still questions, I'm happy to have the speakers stay on and answer them for the next 5 minutes. Otherwise, if nothing, we'll be glad to have you connect with us on the social media pages, on LDES Council, with the MedPlus, DII Energy, and our amazing other speakers. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Chad.
Thank you.